Spider-Man in the MCU is going back to basics in the upcoming Brand New Day, and as a result, let's put him against a very underrated live-action Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man, to see how they would perform in a fight and whether this fight is actually close. And for the sake of this video, we're going to be comparing how these Spider-Men held up in No Way Home, because obviously Tom has had a shit ton of Spider-Man suits over the years, and it would be pretty unfair to composite them all. Now let's get the obvious thing out of the way now, because I know that a lot of people will be commenting this. Yes, when it comes to lifting strength, Tom has a massive advantage over Andrew. I mean, yes, Andrew can support the weight of cars, his webbing can support the weight of planes, and he's been able to stop a bus with his bare hands. But that's really all you have for Andrew. And when you compare this to Tom's Spider-Man being able to support a fucking clock tower when he wasn't even in his Stark suit, yeah, it's a pretty big difference. However, as lifting strength is completely irrelevant when discussing who would win in a fight, the best way to compare Andrew and Tom's Spider-Man is how they held up against the villains in No Way Home, specifically the Lizard and Electro. Now, Andrew did struggle extensively against Lizard in his solo films. However, it is important to mention that Lizard grows stronger with age.
I'm getting stronger every day!
And since the returning characters had been in the MCU for at least a day, we can infer that Connors would have surpassed any strength feat he had in TASM 1, meaning that the Spider-Men in No Way Home scaling to this new version of Connors would overrule any lowballed feats that they had in the past. Andrew's Spider-Man was able to evade this new version of Lizard for a decent period of time, before he was pinned under Connors whilst not even trying to fight, where Andrew eventually overwhelmed Connors and webbed him up, which is pretty impressive, especially when compared to Tom Holland's interactions with Connors, since at the condo he was able to catch him off guard and fold him with ease, and at the final battle, well, MCU Peter was little more than an annoyance to Connors, with him routinely needing the element of surprise or Ned's portals in order to actually do anything to Connors. Besides that, well, Lizard was able to get rid of him pretty easily. And things only get worse for MCU Peter when we look at how they performed against Electro. Andrew's Spider-Man struggled against Electro in their first encounter, because Max was able to counter the web shooters, which put Spider-Man at a disadvantage. However, in their rematch at the final battle, when Electro was more powerful than ever, Andrew's Spider-Man did very well, getting in several hits, taking a barrage of attacks from a pissed-off Electro, and eventually he was able to fully defeat Max with a bit of help from Gwen Stacy. Compare this to MCU Peter's first encounter with Electro, where a single lightning blast was able to have Peter on his ass, so much so that Sandman had to save him, with it being implied that MCU Peter would have been incapable of beating Electro without Sandman's help. And when looking at Electro once he gets his hands on the arc reactor, well, all three Spider-Men are significantly weaker than him. However, it is apparent that Andrew performs the best of all three of them. We see that individual blasts of Electro's lightning at this point in the film can knock down MCU Peter for a long-ass time. Compare that to Andrew's Peter, where he was tortured by Electro in that fight for a long-ass time. And after enduring much more electricity than the other two, he was still able to recover better than Tobey's Spider-Man did, which is pretty impressive. Andrew's Spider-Man doesn't have Stark tech in his suit, and we see in the first Avengers just how much of a difference this makes when dealing with lightning attacks. Basically meaning that Tom's suit was armored and yet he still performed worse than Andrew, confirming that Andrew, when it comes to electric-based attacks at least, is more durable than Tom's Spider-Man. And as far as raw strength goes, well, I would give the slightest edge towards Andrew's Peter, since he was eventually able to overwhelm Connors all by himself. And from there, when we talk about speed, well, I would once again give the point to Andrew's Spider-Man. Whilst all three of them are pretty relative to each other, since all three Spider-Men are able to dodge Electro's lightning in No Way Home, Andrew has the best speed feats in his solo films, since he took things one step further by being able to statue this lightning altogether. And this is significantly more impressive than Tom's best speed feat, where he was able to fight dozens of drones with machine gun fire, especially since they did catch him off guard at times and landed him with bullets. Whereas in TASM 2, Andrew is able to almost effortlessly dodge these electric blasts even whilst mid-air. As a result of this, whilst Tom's Spider-Man definitely has the edge in terms of lifting strength, I would say that Andrew is slightly stronger and faster, whilst MCU Peter is possibly more durable due to the Stark tech in his suit. Moving on to intelligence, I think that these Spider-Men are definitely the smartest ones in their respective fields. He's able to complete equations that scientists with decades of experience have struggled with, uses his webbing to create pretty elaborate traps, comes up with very creative and effective battle plans almost on the instant, understands multiversal concepts and string theory, and so much more. On top of that, I would argue that he is the best at fighting out of all three of the Spider-Men, and that is because, well, he actually fights like a spider. In an enclosed environment, Andrew is possibly the most dangerous of the three Spider-Men because of this. Being able to disappear and reappear behind opponents, ensnare opponents from head to toe in webbing whilst crawling around their bodies, instantly counter airborne opponents by latching onto them, using his insane acrobatics to make any indoor environment his playground, and even choke out opponents just like a real spider would. On the other hand, MCU Peter is also very intelligent, as he's able to understand multiversal concepts as well as the mirror dimension, and whilst Tom's Spider-Man throughout his career hasn't shown himself to be the best fighter, in recent years he demonstrated pretty good intelligence in combat, such as taking on an army of drones in Far From Home, and go blow for blow with Norman Osborn's Green Goblin, being strong and smart enough to counter Goblin's blades and break them. And whilst MCU Peter is nowhere near as good at fighting as Andrew, what MCU Peter does have is a shit ton of experience. He's fought super soldiers like Captain America and Winter Soldier, fought airborne opponents like Falcon and Vulture, endured battles with alien threats such as the Chitauri Infantry, Cull Obsidian, and even an encounter against Thanos himself. He's fought characters like Mysterio and countered his illusion tech. And from there, well, he's fought the same villains that Andrew had in his solo films, in addition to the Raimi villains such as Doc Ock and Green Goblin. As a result of this, whilst Andrew might have been Spider-Man for a hell of a lot longer, I would argue that Tom has much more experience fighting superhuman threats than Andrew does. As a result of this, I would say that they equalize in terms of intelligence. Andrew is more skilled and the better fighter, but Tom's Spider-Man has much more experience despite his shorter time being Spider-Man. When discussing who has the better spider sense, I think that easily goes to Andrew, because it's been able to allow him to dodge much more impressive attacks than Tom's has. And whilst Tom's sense gives him the ability to see through illusions, that's not going to help him very well against Andrew here. What will help MCU Peter, however, is his Stark suit as well as his web shooters. Whilst Andrew's webbing is stronger than Tom's since it was able to restrain Lizard for a long ass time, the amount of versatility that Tom has is undisputable. I mean, in Tom's suit, he has over 500 combinations for his web shooters, including things such as taser webs, rapid fire webs, splitter webs, web grenades, you name it, he's got it. There's also the suit itself to discuss. Whilst Tom's suit doesn't appear to have an AI in No Way Home, it is still incredibly armored as it is augmented with Stark nanotech. And we see in the earlier MCU films just how durable Stark tech can be. And as a result of this, whilst Andrew has the better spider sense and the stronger webbing, Tom has the better suit and also has greater combinations and versatility for his webbing. So now when discussing who would win the fight, it's pretty clear that they have clear-cut advantages over one another, and this would be a hell of a lot closer than Tobey vs Tom. But who do I think wins overall? Well, that's a little complicated. For one, I think that both of these guys should be fast enough to dodge each other's webbing. I mean, they've both been able to dodge Electro's lightning, so I think they should be fine in that regard. Likewise, trying to overpower each other with raw strength isn't gonna work, since Andrew's been able to overwhelm Lizard, a character shown to be stronger than MCU Peter, and MCU Peter just has better lifting feats than Andrew anyways, meaning he should easily be able to lift Andrew off him if Andrew was to try something like that. They're comparable in speed, meaning that I don't think that's going to be the deciding factor either. What I think this fight actually comes down to is Andrew's unpredictability in combat, as whilst MCU Peter is very experienced for a kid of his age, he's never fought anyone like Andrew. Especially if this fight took place in an enclosed environment, Andrew would have a massive advantage advantage due to his experience of laying traps, latching onto opponents, being able to ambush them, and also ensnaring his opponents in webbing like a real spider would. And whilst this strategy wouldn't work immediately, because MCU Peter is surprisingly skilled at fighting in enclosed spaces, it's clear that Andrew has the advantage and the experience in this regard. And if this fight was to take place out in the open, say New York City, I think it would lean towards Andrew's favour as well, since not only is he shown to be better at web swinging, he's also very good at dodging and reacting to airborne opponents and neutralising them altogether. I wouldn't say that this fight is particularly easy for either of them, and no matter who you think wins, I think we can all agree that this is much closer of a fight than if Tobey was to fight Tom's Spider-Man. However, I think Andrew has a couple of advantages in his corner that MCU Peter has no counter for, and as a result of this, I see Andrew's Spider-Man winning high to extreme difficulty. But that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments section, and consider liking the video and subscribing to the YouTube channel as it really helps me out. And if you want to discuss this topic in detail, consider joining the Discord server down below. I thank you all for watching, and as always, I will talk to you all in the next one.